And then it was...
Yeah. So here we can figure out how to match the regular expression that you have listed up there, all of those phone numbers, right? We have three different variations of a phone number, one with parentheses, one without parentheses, one with hyphens, and then the code that I just gave you here, right? You can see that we have the first set of parentheses in there, and then this is using a system of matching every single pattern that we have. So this pattern starts out from basic principle of what you had with just the D's, right? You can still see that there's a 3. However, it's matching a number that's 0 through
Yeah.
9 to 3, right? And then we
So
have,
this would be either, 0 or 1 for the country code, and then either 0 to 9 for like 3 of those for the area.
yep,
And then you got the closed parentheses, and then you've got... So that's going to be a dash, a space, or that's the wild card right there. So that would accept...
the key to look at here is the
Oh, it's got the
brackets around the
backslash, so that would be a
parentheses.
period.
Yeah, the key to look at.
So every grouping has the brackets around it. So if...
Oh, okay.
Do
Yeah.
you see the parenthesis?
So let me try... Stop. I want it to stop popping it up like that. So starting with, we want the parenthesis, and then after that... Oh, so that's either no parentheses or with the parenthesis. So in this case, I want the parenthesis to be required.
Mm-hmm.
So I would leave that out. And so then it would be 0 to 9. And we want 3 of those. And then we've got the closed parenthesis. And then just to get it to match up there, I'm going to do another 0 to 9, and we want 3 of those. So now let's test. No?
So I think for that last part, the 0 to 9, that might need another parentheses around it. So like the 0 to 9
Why?
and then the group of three.
Well,
Um,
I'm looking at this one right here still, where I've got the parentheses, and inside those I have 3 numbers. And then outside the parentheses, I have 3 numbers.
So what if you go back to your original pattern?
What was...
No need to go up, just hit the up arrow key. Get in a habit.
Which pattern
Keep going.
does I have? That one. I don't. You have to tell me which one, because I've been through several different...
A good teacher.
Like,
A good teacher doesn't tell, they show. So I can't tell you
so
anything.
there was...
All I can do is let you go up, 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 and keep going up, and keep going up, and we keep going up, up.
It's
Oh,
gonna...
look at this! Look at all these things. Ah, there's a start to it, right?
So that was when I had without the parentheses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 3. Put this... And that didn't work because I didn't have that. And then it was... So that has the parentheses and then 3 digits and close parentheses and then 3 digits. So
you can get rid of
at
the
this
brackets.
point, I would. At this point, I'm kind of just like, well, I'll.
We can get rid of the inner brackets and just only have the brackets for the parentheses.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, hang on. Why is that there? Okay, so I've got. Hey, we did it. And then I would just add another, the D4 to the end of that.
So more importantly, how do you feel?
What?
How do you feel?
Oh, I'm glad that you pushed me to keep going, because if I was doing this on my own, I would have just given up and used something like this and said. But now I definitely understand how it works a little bit better.
Yeah. Do you feel like a hacker? All right. Nice. Proud of you. Good job. Way to stick with it. Okay. We can bring it back to the rest of the lecture here.
Okay.
All right. So here we have regular expressions continued. So we have character sets, right? These will match on spacing and
screen. Can't see it.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my entire screen. So I just want to show you this, like we have these things called more word. So these are character sets, right? We have a way to match spaces, and there's other characters that we can match. The important thing is how we use regex to do HTML validation. So we have required. So in this case, an HTML form with a required input field, right? That's set up here. The required attribute is a Boolean attribute. When present, it specifies that an input field must be filled out before submitting the form. Note, the required attribute works with the following input types: text, search, URL, telephone, mail, password, date pickers, number, checkbox, radio, and file. You can go ahead and try this. If you run that, and type in your username. So the server processed your input and it was received. We can go ahead and change this type to email. And we have, let's get rid of this from text to, we'll save this. We'll rerun this. And then we'll submit it. And it says, please fill out this field, right? It has to be filled out. This is a required field. Please fill out this field. we go. So it's a way for us to validate HTML. Okay. Now we can check the min length. Alright, so the HTML attribute min length. The min length attribute defines the minimum number of characters as UTF-16 character code units the user can enter into an input or a text area. This must be an integer value 0 or higher. If no min length is specified or an invalid value is specified, the input has no minimum length. This value must be less than or equal to the value of max length, otherwise the value will never be valid, as it is impossible to meet both criteria. The input will fail constraint validation if the length of the text value of the field is less than minimum length of UTF-16 code units long. Right, so by adding min length 5, the value must be either empty or 5 characters longer to be valid. We can use pseudo classes to style the element based on whether the value is valid. And the value will be valid as long as it is either null, empty, or 5 or more characters long. Lime is invalid, lemon is valid. So here's an example, right? Enter a fruit name that is at least 5 letters long. Let's see. B-A-N-A, banana. How about this guy? Aww. Please lengthen this text to 5 characters or more. That's what happens, right? This is a way for us to validate HTML. Okay. Let's look at max length. So the max length attribute specifies the maximum number of characters allowed in the element. The max length attribute can be used on the following elements: input, text area, right? And we can go ahead and run this. You can type in just nothing, servers process your input and return this answer. So I'm trying to run this again. Let's see, Yep, this is max length of 10. So if I rerun this, it says the username can only be a max length of 10. Right, so this is still submitting the form. Yeah. This should be setting it to a max length of 10. So we can go ahead and see what we get when we submit this in the network. So let's go ahead in here and we'll go ahead and put in Yep. So the reason that we're running into that issue is we couldn't see it visually. When I try to type in that 10th character, it doesn't pop up. So this limits the amount of characters that you can actually enter in here, right? It's a little bit confusing if I do this. You can't really tell, but there's only 10 characters there. Alright, here we have the HTML attribute min. The min attribute defines the minimum value that is acceptable and valid for the input containing the attribute. If the value of the element is less than this, the element fails constraint validation. This value must be less than or equal to the value of the max attribute. If a value is specified for min that isn't a valid number, the input has no minimum value. Valid for the numeric input types, including date, month, week, time, date, local, number, range, right? So this is a way for us to check the minimum value that is acceptable for the input, and it's a constraint validation. So in this case, we have our input, and then we have the minimum number, accept it, right? And we have our value, 8. So the value of min in step define what are valid values, even if the step attribute is not included, as step defaults to 0, right? So So because step defaults to 1, valid values include 7.2, 8.2, 9.2, and so on. The value 8 is not valid. Right? So this is just a way for us to check the known value. We can check max. Alright. The max attribute defines the maximum value that is acceptable and valid for the input containing the attribute. If the value of the element is greater than this, the element fails constraint validation. This value must be greater than or equal to the value of the min attribute. If the max attribute is present by is not specified or is invalid, no max value is applied. If the max attribute is valid and a non-empty value is greater than the maximum allowed by the max value, constraint validation will prevent the form submission. So here's some examples, right? What we're looking at is the HTML attribute for max. So here are a couple of different values, right? The type date, the max can be this value. The type month, the max can be this value. The type week, the max can be this value. The type time, the max can be this value, right? And the type date local, and then be this value. So it's a way for us to limit the maximum value. All right. So another concept we're covering here is type. So we have looked at the varying different types we have for HTML inputs. In this case, we're looking at the type text and the type submit. So we run this. The type text will allow us to put in user text, right? So, and then the type submit is just a submit. And we can look at the varying patterns that these match. So the pattern attribute specifies a regular expression that the input element's value is checked against on form submission. So go ahead and try this example. The pattern needs to match this pattern, right? So if we type in a country code, who can give me a country code that we can type in here?
One zero.
Oh, look at it, it's letters, right?
Oh. Yeah. JP.
Is it a 2-digit country code?
JP.
IQ. It's 3 digits.
This is a simple pattern. This is just a way for us to match it. We could restrict it to 2. There we go. So this provides us with a way of validating the input, the input pattern here. Okay. So we have advanced array methods. These advanced array methods are a way for us to update the JavaScript arrays that we have. So a method like .sort. So this array prototype .sort, right? What this does is it actually takes the array and then sorts it into a set of values. You can run this. Take the array March, Jan, February, December. What it's going to do is going to sort it alphabetically, so we get December, February, January, March. And then here we have 1, 30, 4, 21, 1000, and we get 1, 1000, 21, 30, and 4. We have the array method .find. So here we have the array, and then we can check to see if it is found. Right? So you have the array 5, 12, 8, 130, 44, and then we check to see if it was found. So we could do array 1 find the element greater than 10, and this says it returns 12. Right? Then we have .map. So the map method creates a new array populated with the results of calling a provided function on every element in the calling array. So we have this example of a const array, and we have these values placed in it. What we'll do is we'll run the map operation on this. It'll take the variable x, and then it'll return the result of that variable with this operation applied to it. What this does is it gives us a new array, 2, 5, 18, 32, right? And now we have reduce. So the reduce method executes a user-supplied reducer callback function on each element of the array in order, passing in the return value from the calculation on the preceding element. The final result of running the reducer across all elements of the array is a single value. Okay, so here's an array, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here's our initial value, setting it equal to 0, and then we have this sum with initial. So we have array1.reduce, previous value, current value. So this previous value applied to this current value, and then we get the initial value. So we can go ahead and run this. It's going to take the previous value with the current value, the previous value, and the current value, and then add those together, and we get 10. Then we have filter. So the filter method creates a new array with all elements that pass the test implemented by the provided function. So here are the words that we have: spray, limit, elite, exuberant, destruction, present, and then we can filter for the word where the word.length is greater than 6. And here we get exuberant, destruction, and present. Not so elite. Now we'll look at JavaScript timing. So there's just a few functions that we understand. Set timeout, set interval, clear timeout, and clear interval. Okay, so if we check this. All right, so the window object allows execution of the code at specified time intervals. These time intervals are called timing events. The two key methods to use with JavaScript are set timeout, set interval. The set timeout and set interval are both methods of the HTML DOM window. All right, so in this case we have the button on click set timeout my function 3000, and we can try it. So go ahead and try this. Quickly try it and wait for 3 seconds. There we go. Set timeout. So this will call this function with a delay of 3000 milliseconds. We can change it to 1000 and try it. It only takes 1 second. So there's also set interval, clear timeout, clear interval, and each of these are going to take a time variable. In this case, we have the time in milliseconds. Okay. So we have set timeout. It changes to set interval.
And you still gotta click it.
There we go. Oh boy. Yep. It's gonna be hard to get out of this one. Y'all see what's going on here, right? The timing is very short. Then we have clear timeout and clear interval. So come look at this example here. And put in our variable. and then clear interval 1000. Let's try this. So this timing stuff is tricky. It's challenging to demonstrate. However, it's just a way for us to set the time in JavaScript and call a method. Pretty straightforward. Then we have JSON. So what is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JSON is a text format for storing and transporting data. JSON is self-describing and easy to understand. This example is a JSON string, right? The name, John, age, 30, car, null. It defines an object with 3 properties: name, age, car. Each property has a value. If you parse the JSON with the JavaScript string, you can access the data as an object. So in this case, we can parse this JSON, this JavaScript object, as a string. And then we can get the properties off of it. So why use JSON? The JSON format is syntactically similar to the code for creating JavaScript objects. Because of this, a JavaScript program can easily convert JSON data into JavaScript objects. Since the format is text only, JSON data can easily be sent between computers and used by any programming language. JavaScript has a built-in function for converting JSON strings into JavaScript objects. So we have a JSON.parse, and a JavaScript object has a built-in function for converting the object into a JSON string. JSON.stringify will do that for you, right? So this is our object, our JSON string, and then here are the properties, right? So we can understand this as a key and a value. We go to JSON.parse. JSON.parse Here we go, parsing the JSON string. Comes back at 42. And true. So see, we have this string, and then we parse that string, it returns our object. And then from the object we can get the count, and then we can get the result. So the stringify method will stringify a set of key values into a JSON string. So here this JSON stringify can go ahead and stringify these values. If we run this, the first one's going to come back as x, 5, y, 6. The other one's going to be 3, false, false, x. And this comes out with a JSON object. Right. That's the way to stringify.
So is stringify only for console.log, or you can use it pretty much for everything?
JSON.stringify is specifically used for stringifying JSON objects. That's what it's used for. Yeah, it's used for stringifying JSON objects. So, now we're getting into JavaScript local and session storage. So what is a local storage? Local storage is a read-only property of the window, and this interface allows you to access a storage object for the document's origin. The stored data is saved across browser sessions. Local storage is similar to session storage, except that while local storage data has no expiration time, session storage data gets cleared when the page session ends, that is, when the page is closed. Local storage data for a document loaded in a private browsing or incognito session is cleared when the last private tab is closed. Right? Then we have our storage object, which can be used to access the current origin's local storage space. What is session storage? So, window.session storage. The read-only session storage property accesses a session storage object for the current origin. Session storage is similar to local storage. The difference is that while data in local storage doesn't expire, data in session storage is cleared when the page session ends. Whenever a document is loaded in a particular tab in the browser, a unique page session gets created and assigned to that particular tab. That page session is valid only for that particular tab. A page session lasts as long as the tab or the browser's open and survives over page reloads and restores. Opening a page in a new tab or window creates a new session with the value of the top level browsing context, which differs from how session cookies work. Okay, so opening multiple tabs and windows with the same URL creates session storage for each tab and window. And duplicating a tab copies the tab's session storage into the new tab. And closing a tab window ends the session and clears objects in a session storage. Okay. So here's a simple example, right? We want to save the data to session storage, so we set the item, the key, and the value to that session storage, and then we get the item by the key, or we can remove the item by the key, or we can remove all items by typing clear. So there's another way that we can save text between refreshes. The following example autosaves the contents of a text field, and if the browser is refreshed, it restores the text field contents so that no writing is lost. Here we can get the text field that we're going to track. This will only happen if the page is accidentally refreshed. And we get the field and the value in the session storage.getItem. And then we can listen for changes in the text field. So in this case, field.add event listener change function and save the results into the session storage object. So in this case, we're setting the storage session storage.setItem autosave field value. Okay. So we have another method here, session storage. This is set item. So the set item method of the storage interface, when passed a key, name, and value, will add that key to the given storage object or update that key's value if already exists. In this case, we're taking the storage and we're calling .setItem on that object, and we're setting the key name and the value. After we do that, it will be stored. So here's a way that we can populate a bunch of colors and fonts. We were calling local storage.setItem background color red, and here we're doing local storage.setItem font Helvetica, and then here we're doing local storage.setItem image mycat.png. Alright, now we have the remove item method. So the remove item method of the storage interface, when passed a key name, will remove that key from the given storage object if it exists. The storage interface of the web storage API provides access to a particular domain, session, or local storage. If there is no item associated with the given key, this method will do nothing. So if the key name does not exist, this will not remove the item. So here's an example, right? We can set an item background color red, font Helvetica, image mycat, and then remove image. And what that will do is it'll take out this item here in the image. We have get item. So there's storage.getItem. The getItem method of the storage interface, when passed a key name, will return that key's value or null if the key does not exist in the given storage object. And so here we have the value storage.getItem getting set here by the key name, right? So that sets a value. And then we have set styles. So here we're getting an item background color, getting an item font, getting an item image, and then here we're changing those elements, right? So we're getting the element by its ID and setting the value to the current color. Okay. This is just essentially showing you how we can get an item. Then we have local storage .clear, so this will clear out all the items in the storage. So storage.clear will remove all of the items from storage. In this case, we're setting each item, and then when we run .clear, it'll remove all those items from storage. And that's it. So, any questions?
So the storage is a very new concept, I guess, to me. So is this like, is this local storage? I'm just trying to wrap my head around with it. So local storage is not a session. It's like when you run just like the review and finder.
Yeah, if we go here, and then we go to application, and then we go to storage, local storage. Here's an example. So we can type something like let's see, what's a good example here?
So like, what would be a use case for this though?
Yeah, so what is local storage used for? This is used for what is referred to as a progressive web app. So no matter what type of application you're building, you want to store information that persists beyond a single user. Okay, so this is where, this is using a framework to do all this. It's leveraging local storage though. Let's see here. It's using index.db. This is a variation. There's a difference between local storage and index.db, so we can look at PWAs and a local storage.
So is local storage like at an arcade, the player high score that's located on that machine?
I would say this is more specific than something like that. This is actually a part of the browser. So this is a way for us to actually store an item on the browser, right? So window.localstorage.set item key value accepts 2 arguments, right? And this first key is the key that you'd like to set on your value, and the second is the actual value. So it's a way for you to store key pairs on the system.
So if someone was using, like, say, using an application on one browser, and then they go back to the application, whatever is on the local storage would still be there. But if they tried to use that application on a different browser, it wouldn't be there because it's
Yeah. Yep. That's it. So give this time and let this sink in, and just start, playing with it, and yeah, give it time. This is an example here. Right? This is how you can enter a name, set the item, and then as we have continued to practice, right, we use console.log to get our output, and after we do that, we can be sure that we're getting the correct output. Okay. All right.